Alright, so I figured we'd kind of go through a lot of these airports and start looking at some different stuff as far as how our maybe approach light system or things like that are going to be out will affect our legal to go minimums or affect how we kind of flight plan. So typically one of the first things we look at when we start looking at, I've just got the jet charts pulled up here. When we start looking at a flight plan, one of the first things we look at is weather and then NOTAMs. And then we start to think about, okay, how those are going to affect each other. So let's say we've got a flight going to Albuquerque. So basically, when we start looking at these, we kind of want to see first off, are any of these going to affect, are they going to raise our legal landing minimums? Or are we going to have any closed runways? Albuquerque actually had for a long time, they had their big runways closed. And so it made it a lot harder to fly into there. But just starting out, so obstacle tower light doesn't really affect us too much. Runway 8, our VASI is out of service. So what we'll do is we'll actually come over to our jet charts, and that's one we'll kind of look into, is how is that going to affect us? So in Albuquerque, we've got 3, 21, 8, and 26, and then 12 and 30. But then we kind of have to look and see, okay, which one of those can we land on? Is mostly what we're going to plan for is 8 and 26. Those are our big long ones. Let's see. Now there's an ILS to 3 too.
Hey, Davis, real quick. So a VASI, it's different than an ILS, or is it part of the ILS?
So VASI is actually not really part of, it's not an ILS, and it's not a really a part of it. So if you guys remember what VASI stands for, it's Visual Approach Slope Indicator.
Slope indicator.
Yeah. So basically what we're looking at is it's these lights here. And it's just a visual representation of how well you're coming down on the glide slope. So if you're coming down correctly, well, this is actually a 3-bar. That's not typically what you see. What is it doing?
Okay, maybe because it said slope indicator, I was thinking glide slope.
Yeah.
But I guess the question is, VASI and POPI, are they interchangeable or
they are
kind of mutually
similar.
exclusive? Similar?
Yeah,
okay.
Very similar. So, let's see if I can find a picture of each. They're both going to give you basically just like visual representations of how well you're coming down on the glide path. So on this poppy right here, 2 dots, 2 red dots and 2 white dots means we're coming down correctly. This is most of the time what you see. If it's 3 red, we're too slow. So think of red as like bad, or too low. Sorry, red is like bad. But you want a nice even number of dots here. So white is way too high, and if you're coming down with 2 red, 2 white, then you're on a slope. So these are basically just like visual things. Most of the time, this is like when pilots are shooting like visual approaches, or if the like everything's going pretty good. Because clearly, I mean, if there's really heavy fog, it would be really hard to see these coming down. And you would just fly it with instruments coming down on the glide path. But yeah, the VASI and the PAPI are very similar. Different runways have different of each. So if we're looking at 3 left, or actually the NOTAM was for runway 8, right? Let's go to runway 8. So one of the first things we would look at is a lot of times up here in this box right here is just like little notes that may be, like this one says DME required. So now if the DME is out, or if you don't have DME on your plane, then you wouldn't be able to use this. So the DME is required for this approach. So it doesn't say anything about the VASI. And then sometimes you have to look down here and see, sometimes there's little notes down here. It doesn't say anything about that. It's not really a part of the approach light systems. So that also doesn't really affect us much. So it really doesn't really change too much about this. Next, if we're looking airspace area defined, this doesn't really affect us too much either. The runway end identifier lights, also not really much of a thing. They're just giving the pilots a heads up, telling them there's nothing there. The PAPI would be a similar thing. We might just want to go check and see, make sure there's nothing in the notes, but this is probably not going to affect us very much. Oh, actually, we don't even have the, all we have is the ILS to 3, the localizer to 8, and the VOR to 8. So sometimes there's actually approaches, like at SkyWest, there are approaches at certain airports that we can't use because we don't have access to. So there might be an ILS or something that we're just not allowed to use. So we'll just assume, okay, since we don't have the approach chart to 30, our pilots wouldn't be able to fly it based on our approach charts here. So if they had to land on 30, they would have to do a circle to land. And they'd probably do it either based off this ILS. VOR looks the same. Yeah, all the circle to land minimums are the same. So that doesn't affect us at all either. So we keep coming down. An obstacle, a crane, that doesn't really affect us much. Taxiway, that also doesn't really affect us much. That'll be something the pilot will have to kind of avoid. If we check this one out, so this would automatically send off a red flag in my mind if I saw Albuquerque ILS runway 8, but then it's actually just our outer marker. So we can go double check, but since it's just permanently out, I would assume that doesn't really affect us much at all. We probably don't use it for anything. So it doesn't say anything about it in the notes anywhere. It doesn't say anything about the missed approach. If we had a missed approach that went to it, to the eye or back to the outer marker, then yeah, that might be something we'd have to look more into. But it looks like we're going to be just fine without it. Obstacle tower lighting, not a huge concern for us. It's more for the pilots. An RMP approach, we don't have any of those, so that doesn't really affect us. RMP, Still chart the Largo 3 departure. So that would be if we were departing. And then a taxiway. So is there anything on here that would affect our legal minimums?
No.
Nope. Is there anything that would even affect our operation going into Albuquerque?
No, doesn't seem like it.
No. So there's a whole lot of NOTAMs, and none of them really mean all that much to us. So then if we pull up our charts, do you guys have your charts pulled up? Let's everybody go ahead and pull up your charts, because we'll be using them all night. We'll do some more legal to go stuff at the end. Garrett said he did some good stuff yesterday, so we'll go back over that a little bit later. But I feel like this is one of the biggest things I get questions about at work as a trainer, is newer people asking, okay, how does this NOTAM affect us? So I kind of wanted to go through some real-time ones. I'm hoping we find some doozies. Does everybody have their approach charts pulled up? Everybody go ahead.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool.
I do.
Everybody go ahead and figure out what your legal landing minimums would be going into Albuquerque.
For runway 8 is 301 miles.
So for runway A to be 301 mile.
Never mind. I'm looking at annex.
Or you're looking at the, well,
There's an ILS page and a VOR page.
yep.
ILS says it's 300 feet and half mile.
Yeah. So, but actually, is that our lowest legal landing minimums going into Albuquerque?
Runway 3 looks like it's 200.5.
Yeah. Runway 3s are actually a little bit better. 3 is, let's see, I'll show you. 3, I think, is a little bit shorter, if I remember correctly. So most of the time, in reality, a lot of times we plan to 8, but sometimes they'll land 3.
Hey, Davis, who makes the final decision on what runway? So if we're planning runway X, is it the tower that will actually decide what runway they'll land on? I mean, who makes that decision on which run, what, because
So technically, and actually I was totally wrong. I got these mixed up actually. The 3 is the long one, 8 is the shorter one. So it's kind of tower, but in the tower is basically the ones that will decide that. So if we're coming into here and they're pretty busy and they're landing everybody on 3, but that might be their like preferred configuration. But if they're landing everybody on like a 9-knot tailwind or something like that, and finally one pilot comes in and is like, oh, I don't want to land on that, like, I'm not doing it. And no, sorry, guys, 8 is actually the long one. I looked at the wrong, yeah, 8 and 26 are the big long one in front of it. And then 3 and 12 are the second longest. We don't really use 12 and 30. So yeah, Albuquerque's preferred configuration is to run on 8 and 26. But if there was like a really heavy crosswind on there that actually lined it up pretty well for 3 and 12, pilots can refuse to land on, what the tower tells them to. And they can say, no, I'm not landing that. I want to land on a different runway. I want to land on runway 3 because there's a better wind for that one. I don't want to land on like a really strong crosswind for 8. And so then the tower will, they'll let them land on 3.
So how does that work at a major airport, like say a Denver or an ORD, where there's a whole bunch of runways and a whole bunch of traffic? Are we going to still slot them for a particular runway, and then when they get there, ATC will figure it out, or do they generally land on the one we choose?
So, actually, this is always kind of a funny thing that dispatchers talk about a lot at work, because I have talked to pilots and I've asked them, I'm like, hey, do you guys actually, ever look at the runways that we pick? And every single one I've looked, or I've asked that, they kind of pause, and I'm like, I don't care if you do or you don't. And then they always say like, oh, no, we don't. We just pick whatever we want. So half the time what we're looking at as dispatchers are, can they legally land there? And, do they have a long enough runway for us to land there with our, to get numbers for landing? Or do they have legal landing weather minimums? So on that one, if we were going to Albuquerque, as a dispatcher, I would be planning our legal landing minimums. If for some reason fog rolled into Albuquerque and we had a 200-foot ceiling, we'd still be good to fine to go on this, even though they might be landing like the 8 and the 12. I guess it's a bad example. They don't really look much into like what we planned. They typically look at whatever they want to land on, and we're just looking at what can we legally land on. So we'll actually base stuff off of stuff that they're like won't plan to do, but they could do. So we have to plan for them to be able to land on 60% of the runway. So if this was like wet or something, it might be kind of cutting it close for our planning purposes, but that they might actually, when they run their numbers for their actual landing distance, they might be able to land on this 3 because it's a little shorter. They might be able to land on it, and they'll totally land on it, but it might not have been something we were even able to plan. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, so if I'm getting it, it sounds like us picking a runway is mostly just about it being the legal minimums, so that we are basically CYA, and then somebody else figures out where the actual landing happens when we get there.
Yeah. we're looking more at, can we physically land there, and are we legal? Whereas the pilots are more going to look at like, okay, what are we actually going to do? And sometimes they have to do things. So like I've called pilots before and been like, hey, with this thrust reverser out, we can't land on, I think in OHare, for some reason, one of the runways is actually really squirrely when we have a thrust reverser out, and we can't land on it. We can't get our numbers from it, and so I've actually called pilots before and been like, okay, so I planned you on this one because this one is the one we get our best numbers at, and it looks like it's going to be the only one we can land on without bumping payload. So when you get into that airspace, you may want to go ahead and tell ATC, I have to land on this particular runway. And most of the time they already know. But if it's ever something where it's in a situation like that, it's the pilot and the dispatcher are both going to be completely on the same page.
Okay.
Okay, where was I going before that? Oh, okay, so like if there was some thick fog that had been rolling in and we were like, man, I'm going to go ahead and plan us on 3. That's our lowest ILS. But when they get there and maybe the fog like lifted up a little bit, they might just go ahead and land on 8 or 26 just because it's right there in front of the airport. That's their preferred configuration. If they went missed and decided they wanted an extra 100 feet, I mean, they could probably come back around and land on like 3 right there. But yeah, most of the time they kind of do what they want, and ATC will tell them what to do. But they'll do kind of what they want. So like in a big one like OHare, and OHare this happens every now and then. Most of the time it's because of like really gusty crosswinds. And you'll actually hear him say it on the ATC call. So ATC does a call a couple times a day, and they talk about what they're going to do as far as like ground delay programs. I guess we don't have... Am I going blind, or does anybody else see OHare on here?
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Okay, that's fine. I'll pull it up. OHare is the biggest one that affects us because they want to land on the 2.8s and the 2.7s. Like, just really, really bad. And they want to take off on the 2.2s. There's a big overlay of the airport. Sorry, that keeps jumping around. Okay, so we got 27 right up at the top. And then we have 27 left right here. 28 right, 28 center, and 28 left. They want to land so badly on the 27s and the 28s, and they want to take off on the 22s. It's 22 right, 22 left. And sometimes they'll take off on 28 right too if the winds are kind of squirrely. So they'll take off on these, and then they're landing on this one, 27 right, 27 left, 28 center, not as much 28 left, but Yeah, they're landing on that too. And so that's their preferred configuration. That's the way they want to land, and they will land on that, and they will plan on landing with that, even if there is a fairly strong tailwind or like a pretty gusty crosswind. Once pilots start refusing those runways, then they will actually turn the airport configuration around, and then they will land on the 9 left, 9 right, 10 left. Or, well, actually 10 left is typically they take off 10 left from DD right here. They take off on this runway. And a lot of times, actually, they take off from 9 right and 10 left DD. But then they'll land on 9 left and 10 center and 10 right. And then they don't really use much the 2-2s. So it kind of narrows down what they want to do, and as far as like how many planes they can fit in. But most of the time that just becomes with like pilot refusals. So they'll refuse to land a certain configuration, so they'll start some holding, they turn the runway configurations around, and they start landing the other way. So sometimes when we think that they're going to change around the runway configurations, we might plan hold fuel. Just because if people start refusing them, or if the winds kick up, then they'll change the runway configuration around. All right, let's check out a different one. Okay, so Laramie, we've actually had a lot of trouble with lately. So Laramie, we like to land on 3 and 21. It's a much longer runway. 8,500 versus 12 and 30, 6,300. So we typically like to land on 3 and 21. Right now, if we go and look at this, so runway 30, the PAPI is out of service. Runway 30, the approach light system is out of service. If we go ahead and look at the rest of them down, we also know runway 12 and 30 are closed. And then the tower light out doesn't really affect us. Tower all holding doesn't really affect us. Comm remote, comm outlet, that doesn't really affect us much. So let's go ahead and look and see how these affect us. So the PAPI's out for 30, the approach light system's out for 30, and 12 and 30 are just closed. Okay, so we've got a VOR DME approach to 12, and we've got a VOR DME approach to 30. Well, for this sake, let's just say that we can land on 30 and 12. Because that's kind of where I was going with this NOTAM. So now, basically, to land, what they're going to do is, because 12 is closed, and because 30 is also closed, they would have to land on the other runway. And since we don't have an approach to it, they would actually have to do a circle to land. So with a circle to land, we'd still be in our C here. We're looking at 500 feet and 1 1/2 mile. So they would basically be what happens on a circle to land is basically they're just shooting a visual. So they would fly down this DME approach to 12 here. They would fly that down until they got within these minimums, and then they would just fly back around. Wait, 12 is this one, okay. 12 and 30. 12 and 31s are closed. Sorry, got them mixed around. So they would have to land, then they'd be coming back around on 3 or 21. So they'll fly this approach, this VOR DME approach to 12, and then once they get down low enough to where it's visual, they would basically just fly around and then shoot a visual on the other runway. So now, instead of having these landing minimums, we're looking at circle to land. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. Maybe we got some more gems. Let's see. Ontario's had some runway closures lately. So has Sacramento. Okay, here we go. So coming down here, the apron, I don't really care about. But then we have our Nav ILS to 26 left is out of service. Looks like tomorrow from 15 to 23. It's probably going to be like some maintenance or something. So if this were to be out, let's go down and see what approaches that we have. So we're looking at 8 left, 26 left, and 26 right. Those are the approaches that we have. So if 26 left is out, our approach mins were 200.5. So we have to just take out pretty much this whole page if the ILS were out. So tomorrow during that time, we won't be able to use this approach at all. So then our legal landing minimums, well, because we still have an ILS on 8 left, that's a pretty good one. We still have 200.5. And then on 26 right, we still have 200.5. So it doesn't really change much for us. But if the landing configuration were in such a way that the wind was blowing really hard, let's say we had a 20 knot tailwind on the 8s. There we go. So we had a 20 knot tailwind on the 8s. And let's say we wanted to use Ontario as our alternate, because Ontario is pretty much the best alternate in Southern California. For some reason, the weather is almost always good. But let's say we want to use it as an alternate, but there's a 20 knot tailwind on the 8s. So if there's a 20 knot tailwind on the 8s tomorrow from 15 to 23, I want everybody to go through and find out what our alternate mins would be for Ontario. Based on the approaches that we have.
No, it was 26 left that was ILS
Yep.
out.
Yeah, 26 left has the ILS out.
Well, since we could use the 2 nav rule, wouldn't it be 401? Since both of them are 200.5.
Well, if the ILS is out, which runways are you using for your 2 nav aid?
Oh, didn't you say 26 left?
So 26 left has the ILS out of service.
Oh, okay, never mind.
So that basically voids out this procedure.
So 601.5.
Yeah, so 601.5. So what we're looking at there is now we've got 2 good ILSs. So we have 3 approaches, and one is NOTAM to out. So now all we're looking at is 8 left. Okay. So we're looking at 8 left, and that has 200 and a half. And then we're looking at, so we can't use 26 left. That's NOTAMed out. So then we're looking at 26 right. Oops, sorry.
Which is also 200.5.
Yep, which is also 200 and a half.
So, and since they're separate ILSs, that piece of concrete, that would be 400 and one statute mile, right?
Well, it would be. But do you remember I said we have a 20 knot tailwind on 8 left? So if we have a 20 knot tailwind on 8 left, you remember with the 2 nav aid system, we have to have good winds. So separate but suitable runways. We have to be able to land on both of them. So if we have a 20 knot tailwind on 8 left, we can't land on 8 left. So we can actually do the 1 nav aid rule for either one of these, because the wind doesn't matter for the 1 nav aid rule. But for the 2 nav aid rule, they would both have to be separate but suitable runways. So if we had calm winds, we could, yes, do the 2 nav aid rule. And we would have minimums of 401. But since we have a bad tailwind on 8 left, that takes out 8 left. And now we have to go back to the 2 nav aid rule, which we can, or the 1 nav aid rule, which we could use on either one. So our alternate minimums there would be 601.5. Does everyone get how we got there? Does anybody have any questions on that?
Now, just so it was 26 left, ILS out. Does that mean that if there were no tailwind, we could still use 8 right? Just go in the opposite direction on that same concrete? Or if it's out, and both are gone?
So 8 right is actually going to be, we don't have the, just assume there is no 8 right. We could do a circle to land on it. But because we don't have an approach chart for 8 right, you can't really assume that there's an ILS there. The only way we could land 8 right would be a circle to land.
Now, why is that? Why would it be a circle to land? Is it because we don't have all of the VORs, DMEs, and checkpoint coming in the other way, so we've got to basically follow it around and then flip around to land? I guess I'm confused on why a circle to land would work.
So probably what would happen is, and I would actually have to look in the op specs for this class. I'm not sure if we're allowed to do side steps. But probably what would happen is just assume that we cannot do a side step. Do I not have the pen on? No. So if we had to land on 8 right, probably what would happen is we would use the circle to land on 8 left. So we'd follow the ILS in on 8 left. And then once we got close and under these minimums, they would just kind of like step over and land on 8 right. But if we don't have an approach chart for 8 right, then we can't plan on there being like an ILS there. That just means, so the ILS is, think of it as like a box that's shooting out information to the plane. Where's it going to be? So think of there being like a, for 26 left, think of there being like a box, like here, probably somewhere here on the end of the runway, and it's shooting out information this way to the plane, telling it, you know, where it is, what to do, stuff like that. If we don't have one of those over here for 8 right, we can't use the one for, like, we can't, there actually technically is an approach for that. We don't do them, but it's called a back course ILS, and so we can follow what's coming off behind this, what this box is shooting off behind it. But since there's no approach for that, we can't do that either. But yeah, it's just because there's not, and I think, I can't remember if there actually is an ILS for 8 right or not. It might just be an RNAV approach that they have into there. But think of this page as like our company's page, and if we don't have an approach chart for it, it just doesn't even exist to you. But you could do like a circle to land to it.
So if it's an alternate and we do a circle to land, do we still add the, 400 feet and mile?
So if you had to do a circle to land, you would have to base your minimums off of those minimums. You'd have to base your alternate minimums off those.
Okay.
And you can't use a circle to land as on the 2 nav aid rule. It has to be straight in. So it'd make your minimums really high for a alternate. I mean, they'd probably be fine. Ontario has good weather, like 360 days a year. Okay, so that's tomorrow that the ILS is out. So our plane is landing there today. So we'll go. Oh, come on. Let's go back and we'll look at the NOTAMs again, and we'll decide what today's operations are affected like. Okay, so the POM nav VOR is out of service. That's tomorrow. Which I believe is actually going to big time affect us. Or actually, maybe it's the PDZ that we use in all the missed approaches. Yeah. But that would be for tomorrow anyway. So Ontario Nav ILS 26 left, localizer, and DME is out of service, and that's today. And they're not expecting it to get back in service until looks like the 21st. Just an estimate though. That's not Eastern Standard Time, that's just estimate. Probably what's going on here is that this thing went out and they have it scheduled for service tomorrow. And I'm betting that once this is done, this will go out too. And they're fixing it tomorrow is probably what's going on. But so let's see how a localizer DME being out would affect this approach chart. So we have 26 left here. So when we go down and we look at our localizer, what was it? Localizer and DME are out of service. So there's nothing up here in the notes about DME or anything. So we're probably, pretty okay there. It doesn't look like we have to use our DME, the missed approach, or the ILS DME for the missed approach or anything like that. So then down here, so does anyone know where I would look on here for our minimums if the localizer is out? Keep in mind this is a trick question. I'm kind of a horrible person for asking that.
You said the localizer out?
Yeah.
Look right under where it says 26 left. It says loc and then parentheses glide slope out.
Yeah, so this would be only a localizer approach. That's why I said I was kind of a trick question. If the localizer is out, we can't use this. It takes out the entire chart. So we can use, there's a couple of different ways we can use this chart. We can use this chart if the full ILS is operational and we get our best minimums there. if the glide slope is out, we can fly a localizer. So if the glide slope is out, we can still use the localizer, and that gives us information, like lateral information, but we don't have any vertical navigation if the glide slope is out. This side step, don't worry about it. And then circle to land would only be off of the ILS. So we actually have no minimums for a localizer being out. So if the localizer is out, that would pretty much just take this entire chart out, which is kind of tricky because it says localizer out, so you would think we could use the other parts of the ILS. But if you go through and look, it basically just requires us to have the localizer because we don't have any numbers for that. This would be for the glide slope out. So why they don't put ILS out of service, I don't know. But it's kind of tricky. Do you guys get that? Sorry for leading you down a rabbit hole.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah, I mean, just because there's no numbers we could look at. So it looks like, and this happens all the time, like don't, people will think, oh, the localizer's out, we can still use this one. And they think it's like just one or the other. But we can, there's just no numbers to base your minimums off of, so there's no way to actually use it. Ontario's great though. Let's this is the Ontario. If you do much dispatching for Southern California, this is the Ontario you'll come to know and love. Tin and clear. So, actually, right now, based upon this METAR, what would our alternate minimums be?
Can you repeat the question?
So based upon this METAR, if we're only looking at this METAR, so if we're only looking at this METAR, and the TAF would actually be similar. If we're only looking at this METAR, and we're trying to find out, okay, what are our alternate minimums for Ontario? What would they be? Do you get what I'm asking there?
Is that if Ontario is our alternate, or if we need an alternate for a flight to Ontario? Because
That's
we wouldn't need an alternate to Ontario.
correct. This is if Ontario is our listed alternate. So we're going to use Ontario as an alternate. Say there's just a terrible fog in LA. It's very possible there might be, even with this weather, like 50 miles down the road. But yeah, so we're using Ontario as an alternate. Sorry, that's my bad. So basically what I'm asking here is, can we use the 2 nav aid rule with this? I'm sure half of you are like, why do we even need to figure out if we have to use the 2 nav aid rule? The weather's great, which you don't, but the big thing I'm looking at here is, can we use the 2 nav aid rule with this wind?
No, it's got to be less than 10 knots, right?
Yeah, this is coming right down 2.6. Just, you can pretty much, that's going to assume that's going to be at least an 11 knot tailwind on the 8s. So we'd be looking at the 1 nav aid rule at best. Does everyone get that?
So is 10 knots the cutoff?
Yeah. So we'd be looking at the 1 nav aid rule. And that would be, it's going to be beautiful in Ontario. Let's see. Right around this time of night is when Southern California starts to get that marine layer that rolls in. What else is down there? That's good enough. Okay, so based on these METARs, you think anybody's got listed Ontario listed as an alternate right now?
Nope.
Nope. No, it's probably beautiful, unless all their TAFs are bad. Oh, actually, it's not until 4 Zulu. So Santa Barbara looks beautiful. But if we're going to LA, are we going to need an alternate at any point tonight? Before we talk about it, I want everyone to write down from what time your ETA would be that you would need an alternate. So from this time to this time, from X time to Y time, I would need an alternate. Has everybody got it? So from what to what? Like what time to what time would I start needing an alternate, and would I be done legally needing an alternate?
400. 4 Zulu to 1359 Zulu.
Does anyone else disagree?
I'm with him.
So from 4 Zulu to 1359 Zulu, we need an alternate?
Wouldn't it be an hour before 4 because it's an hour before? If our ETA's right at 4, we'd have to be an hour prior. So
Yep.
3.
So from 3 until, if we got an hour before, what else do we need?
An hour after, so it'd be that 1500.
Yeah, 1459, or yeah, 1500. So from 3 Zulu until 1459 Zulu, we need an alternate. Because we've got this overcast at 1,000 right here.
Keep forgetting that extra hour.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, I don't know, I think Garrett kind of went, didn't he? He went over a lot of legal to go stuff last night, didn't he? That's kind of why we're hammering weather so hard this week. It's just because it's such a repetition thing that, and the difference between legal to go and then do I need an alternate is very, very different. So with legal to go, we're only looking at our ETA. With alternate, we're looking at an hour before and an hour after window. But all right, let's take a break. Why don't we come back at 7:05?
Sounds good.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So let's go through. We've talked about some NOTAMs. I have doctored up a doozy of a TAF for us. So let's say that we are going to LA. At some point, we gotta find some approach charts here, huh? Here we go. Okay, so we're going to LA. And first, what I want us to do is I want us to go over the NOTAMs for LA and how that's going to affect our operation into there. For this purpose, I want the worst NOTAMs that we've got, and I don't want to worry about these times. So we're just not going to worry about the times for now. In real life, yeah, of course you'd worry about the times, but for now, we're not going to worry about the times. If it says ILS out of service, we're just going to assume the ILS is out of service, just so that we can have some of those out of service. So we're going to go over these, go over how they would affect our legal to go, and then I have got some weather that we'll go through for our legal to go minimums, and then do we need an alternate? So we're going through here. Remember, half of these NOTAMs don't really apply to us much at all. So, but we're trying to figure out the ones that do apply to us. So we've got LA taxiway, don't care about. We've got AD, so aerodrome, airport, runway status light system out of service. I don't really care much about that, it's just a status light system. Service, I don't really care too much about that. ILS 25 right. So 25 right is now out. So if you're taking notes or something, just kind of think, well, okay, 25 right, ILS. Okay. The service MBST W is probably wind shear, but let's double check. I'm actually not sure what that is. For this reason, we'll just MBST WS. We'll just kind of Google it and go with whatever Google says. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Wonderful. MBST is not on here. Let's see if WS is. WS is not either. Okay, we'll just assume that doesn't apply to us for now, and we'll move on. Otherwise, in real life, we'd have to find out what it means, but
A little further down, you got a doozy. Runway 6 left, 24 right, closed daily, 7:30 to 13:30.
there we go. Yep, that's also another one we're looking at. So 6 left, so six left. We're just gonna call that one closed. Okay. So yeah, these are all taxiways. 25 right, we've already got that out of service. 6 left, 24 right, closed, but it really is only closed from 7:30 to 13:30. Is that going to affect our... not too much. We'll just say that it's closed, though. Location sign, doesn't matter too much to us. Oh, okay, sorry, that we were right there. Taxiway, 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 taxiway. These are all just direction signs. Taxiway T available to aircraft wingspan. Doesn't really matter to us much. More taxiways, more taxiways, more taxiways, more taxiways.
ILS on 7th left is out.
Yep, so we'll say 7 left. Okay. We'll keep scrolling. Standard instrument departure. Doesn't mean too much to us. We're coming to. We're gonna be arriving in LA. Okay, so this one's about takeoff mins and obstacle departure procedures. That one doesn't matter too much. LAX, instrument approach, RNAV, 7 right. We're not going to worry about that for now. So we're probably going to be planning an ILS into here because I gave us bad weather. Instrument approach, ILS or localizer 7 right, amendment ILS 7 right. DA 298 all cats. Visibility all cats 4,000. Okay, so that changes our mins right there. So if we need 4,000 RVR for legal. Instrument approach, RNAV, not going to worry about that. Instrument approach, RNAV, we won't worry about that right now. Instrument approach, RNAV, instrument approach, ILS 6 right. So on that one, so this one, so visibility, all cats 4,000. Disregard note if RVR 1800 authorized with use of flight director or autopilot or HUD to decision altitude. So 6 right, we're also going to be stuck to 4,000. So RNAV 7 left, RNAV 7 left, ILS 7 left. Well, our ILS we're already assuming is out, so don't worry about that one either. Okay, so let's go see what charts we've got. Okay, so we've got 6 left. So we're just going to call that closed. We're not going to worry about the times. We're just going to say that that one's closed like all day. So we disregard 6 left, 6 right. 6 right, we're automatically assuming 4,000 because it's in the NOTAM. So 4,200, so we need 3/4 for 6 left. Whoops. So 6 left is going to be 4,000 RVR, or it said 3/4 of a mile. And then a 200-foot ceiling. Okay, so that's the first one we can use. Now we've got 7 left. So 7 left, do you remember? Our ILS was NOTAM'd out. So this one is completely void to us. Can't use this one.
Our router said 6 left was closed.
Did it say, yeah, 6 left was closed. Was that, did I say? That was 6 right that we just used. So this one was closed. 6 left is closed. 6 right had the NOTAM that we have to have 4,000 RVR. So if we come down here, we already know that 4,000 RVR is going to be 3/4 of a mile. So now our mins here are going to be 4,000 RVR or 200. You get that? That's for 6 right. That was in 8:98:39. Amendment 18 ILS 6 right. Oh, actually it's going to be 222. So we need 300. We need 300 and 4,000. Do you guys get that? Oh, I see what you said.
Yeah.
My bad. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Nice call. My bad. I mistyped. We're looking at 6 right. I typed 6 left. Yeah, my bad. Okay, so 6 left, we've got that. For 7 left, remember our ILS was notamed out. Got that written over here. So this one's void. Then we've got 7 right. So 7 right. You remember, let's go back and let's look at our notum for that because I think it had a similar notum. That was this 8-7678. So decision height 298. Or decision altitude, sorry. So now we're going to be looking at 300 for that and an RVR of 4,000. So they're basically saying we got to up this by 100, and then we got to use this 4,000 RVR and 3/4. So let's go ahead and put that in here. 7 right, 4,000 RVR, 3/4, and then a 300-foot ceiling, or SIG. SIG is just short for ceiling. Okay, so now let's see what else. Whoops. Let's see what else we got. Now we're going down to 24 left. So at 24 left, we didn't have any notams about that one. Okay. So does anybody want to take a shot at 24 left and tell me what our minimums are there?
200 feet, 3/4 mile.
Yep. Okay, so let's just go plug that in over here. So, and 200-foot SIG. Okay. So now we'll move on. Now we're at 24 right. Well, 24 right's closed. So we can't use that. Now we're at 25 left. We didn't have any notams about 25 left. So now we've got 1/2 mile and 200. That might be saving us. Okay, so let's see what else we got. Now we have 25 right. So do you remember back on our NOTAM, this one's NOTAMed out. So we can't use that one. So then this one's out. Can't use that approach. So that is the end of our approaches. So now I have made up a little worksheet. Let's just take out this line. So these are the best approaches that we've got right here. So based on that, I want you guys to go through this. This is kind of like the thought process that you would want to use as to like, okay, what are our legal to-go mens? You know, what kind of approaches are we looking at here? LA. So if you look at their winds up here, which runways do you think they're landing on?
Definitely not the 7 or the 6.
Yeah. So they like to land on their 2.4s and 2.5s almost always. I just kind of made this TAF. Like I just kind of doctored it from what it was. So you'd probably never see 20 gusting to 40 with half knot or half statute mile, or with 1/8 mile in fog. You typically just never see that kind of wind and fog.
Now, Davis, on the one with the fog, the VV001.
Yep.
What's the 1215/17?
So right here we're looking on the date is the 12th.
Okay, so on the 12th.
And we're looking at this was issued at 2339, and it is good on the 13th. 13. So it's good from the 13th at 00 until the 14th at 06 Zulu. Do you get that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then this down here is a tempo on the 13th, just like up here. So, well, okay, let's look at this one first. So from the 13th at 14 Zulu, that's this line. During a tempo, they're going to tell you from when that tempo starts to when the tempo ends. So this is the 13th, and it's going to start at 15, and it's going to end at 17. Zulu.
Okay.
So why don't you guys take a few minutes, and now that we've talked about how our NOTAMs are going to affect the approach charts, let's then think about now how that's going to affect our operation with these. And let's do some, are we legal to go? Do we need an alternate? Stuff like that. Why don't you guys go ahead and do that, and then we can all walk through it. All right, is anybody still working? Take that as a no. All right, so at 03 Zulu, are we legal to go?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Supposed to be skies clear, winds are pretty good. Yeah, we're good. Do we need an alternate?
At 0300 Zulu, yes, because cloud cover at 1,000 feet.
Yep. Nice. Okay. So yes and yes. So 0330. I think I meant to change that a little bit more. 0330. Are we legal to go? Somebody other than Brian.
Yes.
Yes. Do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that was a pretty easy one. I think I meant to change that one more. At 1430, are we legal to go?
No.
Say that one more time, so I kind of broke up.
No, we're not legal to go.
We're not. Why are we not legal to go at 1430?
Because we only have a half mile at 14 Zulu.
But we found out earlier on 25 left that our minimums are a half mile.
Oh, okay. Oh, I missed that. Okay, so we're legal, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're legal. And then do we need an alt? So if we're almost barely legal, would we need an alternate?
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely need an alternate. At 15 Zulu, are we legal to go?
No.
No, we are not. NA. At 1755, are we legal to go?
Yes.
Yes. What's our weather going to be?
Half mile broken at 200 and overcast at 2000.
Nice. So you see how once this line is done, this is just a tempo. Once this line is done, we revert back up to this line. So after 17 Zulu, we go back up to the 14 Zulu line until 18. Nice. Okay, so then we're legal to go. Do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, Davis?
Yep.
Who controls the arrival ETA? So, for example, if we've got 1755, who controls it to not move it back to, say, 1802?
So when you plug into your, oops. Just going to go ahead and erase these drawings. So that's a good question. So what we're looking at here, we'll go to the highs. Where is it that you... I've gone... Oh, flight plan. There we go. Where are we leaving from, guys? Throw it on airport.
Seattle.
Seattle. We're going to LA. We're going to be going at Mach 7.4. Okay. So we'll just say we're going straight there. For this purpose. So our estimated time en route is going to be 2 hours and 56 minutes. So if the way that we decide our ETA is we're going to say our estimated time of departure, our ETD. Is everyone good if I use ETD for estimated time of departure? It's going to be let's just say it's 12 Zulu. Okay, so that's when the plane is going to push back from the gate. So we're going to push back from Seattle 12 Zulu. Or taxi out. Seattle's typically pretty good. We'll keep that to 27 minutes. Most of the time that just comes out of a computer average. Like at SkyWest, we just have computer averages for different times of the year and, you know, all sorts of different times. Everything's pretty much computerized. So, but, you know, if there was a long taxi, we might could put it that as more. We could put it to, you know, 45 minutes or something like that if we were expecting some taxi delays. Our en route time, what do we have, 2:56? 2 hours and 56 minutes. So 2 hours, 56 minutes. So basically what we're looking at there is, we'll line those up. That is what we're looking at for our estimated time of arrival. For our legality purposes. That's what time we're going to land. So we're looking at 12. Plus 27. Or plus 2.56. Does everyone get that part?
And so basically it's 1523.
Yeah. Kind of just trying to write this out so that it looks neat and pretty. So then, yeah, what we're looking at, you already added up, it's 1523. Okay, so that's what we're looking at there. It's 1523 Zulu. That's our estimated time of arrival. That's how we figure that out. So everything like this departure time is concrete. That's not going to change. That is there when they sell the ticket. Everything like that. So our ETA is dependent upon, so like sometimes if we're flying, into a big headwind, our en route burn is a lot longer. Sometimes it's shorter. Just varies different times of the year. But so if we had it at 1523 Zulu, is 1523 Zulu legal to go? So we're talking, this is well before the flight. No, it's not. Okay, so legal to go. No. It's kind of good to go over one of these because actually my proctor for my written exam to get my license was not, he gave me a flight plan that was not legal to go. So when I figured it up, it was not legal to go, and I had to delay it by it was like 23 minutes. And it was very tricky, and I did not think he was going to do that, but he did. So if we needed it to be legal to go, do you think we can push the time forward? So we're going to leave early. Do you think we'd be able to do that?
No.
No. They won't let us do that. So now we need to delay it. So what time of arrival do we need to delay it to make it legal?
1701.
1701. So if we want to delay it to 1701, how many minutes do we need to delay departure?
98.
98 minutes. So that's an hour and 38 minutes. So what we would do is you would just say, you would delay it, 98 minutes. So our new estimated time of departure would be 13:38 Zulu. Now we get us there at 1701, make us legal.
Could you do that on that, like the test that you did? Could you have done this?
Yep, that's exactly what I did right there. They landed I think 1 minute after it was legal. And he came back in the room. It was the first question he asked me. He came back in the room and he's like, well, what do you think? And I just looked and I was like, it's not legal to go. And he's like, okay, what'd you do? And I said, well, I delayed it. I can't remember how many minutes, but I was like, well, I delayed it 33 minutes. And he's like, all right, nice job. And as soon as he found out that I delayed it, he was a lot more, he was pretty pleased. He said that a lot of people will miss that just because it's such I don't know, it's a circumstance I guess a lot of people wouldn't think that a proctor would give. But they totally could.
So I guess my follow-up question then with all of this is so one of the examples you had was ETA 1755 Zulu, where it's not legal to go. But if we push back the estimated arrival to 1801, all of a sudden we're legal and we don't need an alternate.
Well, at 1755 we were legal.
Or sorry, 1755 we were legal, but we still needed an alternate.
Okay.
What's to stop? I mean, is that allowable for a dispatcher to push back the arrival 6 minutes to put it into a zone where an alternate is not required?
Well, so I think you're confusing yourself a little bit. What time would we actually need to delay it to, though, to not need an alternate? Because we would need an alternate. Would we need an alternate at 18 Zulu?
I'm thinking no. Scattered at 2,500 feet.
Well, what's an hour before it?
Oh, so an hour before 1,700.
Yep. And what's our weather at 17? Or even just 30 minutes before. What's our weather?
So that's the line at 1,400. We go by half mile and overcast at 2,000.
Yeah. Overcast 200. So,
Oh,
yeah, anything before 18 Zulu, we need an alternate. And at 18, or I guess it's less than this scattered clear. So we're going to need an alternate up until 19 Zulu.
Okay.
So 1 hour before 19 Zulu is 18 Zulu, and 18 Zulu is when we get this, finally, this clearing. So we still need an alternate until 19 Zulu arrival.
Okay. That's, I think, what I
So,
was missing.
yeah, would you delay a flight as a dispatcher? You don't really care about adding an alternate. If you have to add an alternate, it's a legal thing. You add an alternate. I have like heard of stories of people delaying flights so that they didn't need an alternate because like maybe their company was really stingy on fuel. But I've never heard anyone even have the thought of doing it at SkyWest, I'll tell you that. So you're not really worried about that. As a dispatcher, what we're worried about, I mean, saving fuel is great. You know, you don't want to like just max out the tank on every flight, clearly. But I mean, the reason why those standards are there is because this all the time, fog lingers around for an hour more than it's supposed to. So if it, you know, if it came down to something like that, you might want and that's up to you and your operational control, but you might still want the alternate anyway. So to answer your question, would you delay a flight for an alternate? No, probably not. Most companies are more worried about their on-time departures and all their statistics than they are worried about carrying an extra 1,000 pounds of fuel.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's not something I would really worry about. And you would get to, I mean, if that situation ever came up, it would be more at your on-the-job training of, you know, whatever company you get hired on with first.
Well, I think it was more a question that I kind of was still trying to process the hour before, hour after. And so, yeah, I had my window wrong. So
Oh, yeah, no worries. But even
but
6 minutes, like I've had flights that have been. I actually had one flight that I calculated everything up, and it was like on here, it would have been like an estimated time of arrival of like 16:59. And I had to call and delay it 1 minute. So that one was kind of almost comical. But you know, legalities are legalities. They have to be met. But yeah, if you were going to delay it for just taking off an alternate, I wouldn't do it. I'd go ahead and just add it on. But All right, let me see. This beautiful TAF. Does anyone have any questions about anything else going on that, or any what ifs? Okay. Let's do another one. Let's see, maybe on our aviation chart, maybe if I don't have to fake one. Oh man. This looks like a bad time for everyone involved in New York flying. I didn't realize the hurricane was so close. I guess it's supposed to hit, what, tomorrow or the next day?
Yeah, United and American were already canceling, but of course Delta hasn't yet. They were
Yeah.
already doing it when I left work around 2 o'clock today.
Really?
Yeah, they're already canceling for like the next 3 days.
That's kind of surprising. Believe it or not, hurricanes really don't affect our operation that much. The big thing that affects American is Charlotte is one of their big hubs, so that's probably why they are. But by the time it gets into Charlotte, they may only have like just gusty winds and heavy rain. Um, huh. Yeah, so Delta's holding out, huh?
Yeah, they're taking the wait and see approach.
Yeah, well,
What they did with Houston last year, and then the airport shut down and all our crews were stuck there, so that was a
yeah.
fun couple days.
Well, Houston was a little different. We actually were still able to land planes in there and everything, but the airport flooded. I remember showing up and I still had flights on my desk into Houston, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "Don't we have a hurricane there?" And someone was like, "Dude, look at the METAR, man. It's really not that bad." And I was like, "Well, actually, yeah, it's just gusty wind and heavy rain." And
Just
I
no
think,
passengers able to get to the airport.
yeah, but there's no passengers that are able to really get there or get home from there.
Yeah, we had crews like stuck in the airport, and we just had to reposition planes out to get all the crews out because they literally couldn't do anything. There was nowhere for them to go. They were just stuck there.
I guess I
Hotels
didn't
sold
see
out, and the
this
shuttles wouldn't pick them up because it was all flooded around them. We had one girl stuck in a hotel for 4 days because the roads were all shut down. The
Oh
whole
yeah, I heard about that.
that was rough.
I also had another crew. He called me and he was landing in somewhere in Louisiana. I think it was during that same thing. Or no, I think it was Mississippi. It was different. It was a different one. And actually, it was supposed to hit like 3 hours or something. It was supposed to make landfall, and he landed in southern Mississippi. I think down in like PIB, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, or something. And it was supposed to get hit that night. And he calls me up like before the flight, and he's like, "So are we seriously doing this flight?" And I was like, "Actually, the flight's like no problem." I was like, there's nothing really going to be there by the time we get there." And I was like, "We're going to beat it in by at least 2 or 3 hours." And he's like, "Yeah, that wasn't really my question." He's like, "We're supposed to overnight there." And I was like, "Oh, well." I'll make a phone call and ask, but you may just be strapping into your hotel and riding that one out. And sure enough, they did, and he just it went over pretty quick. Like it went over that night, and then I think he still flew out the next morning. But sure enough, he was like right under the hurricane. It was a real small, like fast moving one. So yeah, it was kind of funny. I felt bad for him because sure enough, I mean, he just was like trapped in a hotel while this hurricane is moving over top of him.
Watching the most recent report, well, one this afternoon, they indicated that this hurricane, where the ones down the Gulf are like 400 miles wide, this one is actually about 1,000 miles wide.
Yeah. So
it's a pretty massive area.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's a very powerful one. Somebody actually asked me a few days back. They were like, "So what about that hurricane?" And I was like, "Oh, it'll never make it." I was like, "It'll, I was like, that it's not going to be a big issue." And because so if you have this huge hurricane back here, what was the weather phenomenon that we talked about that affects the path of hurricanes? Not weather phenomenon, I guess. Earth phenomenon.
Just the prevailing winds. Push it back out to the.
It's the trade winds, isn't it?
The
talking about Coriolis.
The Coriolis effect. So if you look at most hurricanes that start, I mean, that far back, like Bermuda's like way up here or something. I mean, this thing started like way back. And it started going up, and when somebody asked me about it, I was like, it'll never make it. I was like, it'll probably come up here, and I was like, the Coriolis effect will take over. I was like, we might get some heavy wind. Sorry, this is a light blue. It's okay. And so I was like, it'll probably come up here, and the Coriolis effect will turn it to the right. I was like, we may get some heavy rain on the coast. I was like, but that thing will probably turn right and head back out. And then I saw on the news, I think it was yesterday, and they were talking about most hurricanes that start where this thing started up never make it. And that this is like the only one that's ever actually taken that path to come from that far and still hit the United States. So this is actually like a really powerful hurricane.
One of the reasons they indicated that is happening is because there's a huge high pressure mass above it, north of it, that's holding it down and keeping it on that line.
Oh, okay, so big high pressure mass like up here.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Could be. But yeah, it's probably going to, I mean, we'll look in a minute and see how right I am. But I bet it hits this coastline and like turns up, and then it's going to wreak havoc on like the New Yorks and Boston before it goes away. Which I'm surprised that, I don't know, if Delta hasn't canceled flights yet. They probably will soon. They've got so many New Yorks. I don't know. We'll see. So that's my trajectory. Do you guys think I'm going to be right? You can say no.
Most recent computer models show that it's, as soon as it hits landfall or just before, it's going to turn slightly south.
Really?
Yeah, and then it should turn north.
Oh, slightly south, and then it turns up. Huh. Okay, so I was wrong. You guys should have said I was wrong. I would have given you extra points.
To be fair, Rex said you're wrong, and so he just beat us to it. So.
All right, Rex, you get extra points this time around.
Great. How do I apply that?
Exactly. Rex is already taken and passed. He's just kind of refreshing. So, sorry, I hope it was okay for me to say that, Rex.
That's fine. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not sweating nearly as much during these final weeks as I was during the last course.
Yeah. So sure enough, it is supposed to turn a little south, and then it's supposed to come back up. It may end up just scattering out over, I'm flying out tomorrow, so I was actually looking at it earlier today, and I was trying to figure out when it was going to make landfall. I'm like down right here right now.
This recent turn, it only changed yesterday that it turned to the south. It's turning to the south.
I was just looking at when it's going to make landfall. And it looks like it's not till Friday. So I wasn't too worried about getting out. Let's see if there's some bad weather we can talk about up in the New Yorks. Or do we even have charts for any of those? We may not have charts for any of them. We'll still look at them. Okay, so the New Yorks have got pretty low ceilings. Temp dew point spread, we might see some fog there. But the surface viz is pretty good, it's saying. DC area still looks fine. Well, the Pennsylvania looks pretty good. Ah, here we go. Alright, why don't you guys take like 10 minutes and come back at about 8:15, and I'm going to go ahead and make a doctor up something good here.
Okay.
right, is everybody back? Take that as a yes. All right, what I want you to do, we've got Seattle. I want you to pull up the charts. Get familiar with these charts. So 16 left, we've got 16 center, 16 right, 34 left, 34 center, 34 right. So we have 3 runways in Seattle. Sixteens are from up here, 34s are from down here. We have the long one, center, the shortest one. Shortest one's still like 8,500 though, so they're all pretty long. Just the long one is huge. So then I want you to pull up the pilot web. I will send out the link for this and in the chat. So in here, we will type KSEA. Oops. Hit View NOTAMs. And I want you guys to go through these NOTAMs. And we're going to, after you go through them, we'll talk about which ones are important. Is there anything that might affect us? So I'll give everybody 10-15 minutes or so to go through these. All right, has everybody pretty well gone through them?
Yeah.
All right. So let's start to look. We don't have Cat 2 charts, so we're just going to assume that we can't do them for here. So we're not really too worried about that. Otherwise, yes, we would be. Does anyone know what these mean, or did anyone go look them up? So this is the RVR for the touchdown zone, and this is the RVR for the rollout zone. So basically what that means is 34 center, the touchdown zone, and 16 center, the rollout zone. So for 34 center, it would be like the first third of the runway. So what that means is that there's a machine like there's a machine like right here. There's oh, that's for the center. Dang it. Okay, so 34 center is a machine like right there, and then it's probably like, I don't know, like right there. And those are shooting magic laser beams at each other to figure out what the RVRs are. So this would be the first third, and then this would probably be the second third, and then up to the end. The end is like up here. So touchdown, midpoint, and then roll out. And then on 16 center, touchdown, midpoint, and roll out. So that means these machines are like malfunctioning. Can affect you, might not. Okay, so what else did we find that might be something that would be something we'd have to look into?
The really big one is 16L and 34R are
Yep.
closed.
Yeah, it's closed. So they're pretty much having, I'll actually tell you that they are pretty much having ground delay programs almost every day from now until December when it opens back up. They're doing some runway construction. So work in progress construction. That's why it's closed. Was there anything else anybody saw might affect us? Most of this is actually just 4, 16 left and 34 right. This might be something to look at, the TCM Nav VOR. Basically, we would just want to, so that's 34, well, let's start at the top. $16 left, so this one's out. Looks like we're using the Seattle VOR in all of our missed approaches. And I don't really even see any TCM VOR in any of these. So, looks like we're good there. Anything else? I think that might have been it, really.
Actually, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
There's one. Yeah, hello?
You there?
Yeah. The 09/095 Seattle Nav VOT out of service. What's VOT? I couldn't find it.
So it's basically just something that you tune into to find out if the Seattle VOR is working.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically just something to check the accuracy of a VOR when you're still on the ground. Okay. 34 center. Amendment 3E. Procedure NA. But then so it looks like we're not allowed to do 34 center ILS either. This one says we are, but then this one is after it, so I would assume that this one is the most correct. Huh, okay. Okay, so then let's go through and look. Did you guys go ahead and get all your minimums for the approach charts? Was there anyone still getting their minimums for the approach charts, or did you guys do that when you were doing the NOTAMs? I'll just assume you did it when you were doing the NOTAMs. Okay, so I kind of played off one of the TAFs that we had from earlier. It's a big one. So why don't you guys go ahead and do this one, and then we can talk about it when you're done. I'll go ahead and give you about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. All right, is anybody still working on this? Sweet. Okay, so at 2:30 Zulu, are we legal to go?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we've still got 16 right and 34 left. And 16 center? What? Yeah, I believe 16 center too. Yeah, this only took out 34.
Yeah, I did mine out 16 center.
Yeah. So that's going to be...
All right, 34 center is what I looked at.
Well, 34 center we saw was NA right now. So procedure NA.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But 16 center is going to be just as good. They all pretty much have 200 and a half. Do we need an alternate?
No.
Nope. What about 3:30? Are we legal?
Yes.
Yep. Do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we've got that overcast 200 coming at 4 o'clock. So 30 minutes later.
So with the overcast at 200 and the minimum's 200, that would require an alternate. But if it's like 201, it wouldn't. Is that so? If it's at the minimum, it requires an alternate.
Well,
Just to be sure.
Well, I mean, we're not really worried about our minimums. For our minimums, we're using the 1, 2, 3 rule.
Mhm.
So if there's a ceiling less than 2,000 feet or visibility less than 3 miles, 1 hour before or 1 hour after, that's when we're putting an alternate on. So we needed an alternate far before it got to 200.
Just because of that half mile.
Well, just
Or-
I mean, we're looking up here, so an hour after is 4:30.
Mhm.
So we've got overcast at 200 feet. So 200 is less than 2,000. I think you're getting messed up with this being 200, not 2,000.
Oh well, no, like because the minimums for that 16 is 200 and a half mile, correct?
Yeah.
So are you referring to that 200 when you're looking at the overcast at 200?
Yeah.
So if those two match, you need an alternate. But if overcast is 200 and, or say like, just for instance, 201, you wouldn't need an alternate.
You would still need an alternate. We need an alternate if the ceiling is less than 2,000 feet. So even if it was overcast at 300, 400, 500, anything like that, we still need the alternate.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I am getting mixed up. I understand.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking on that, but okay.
That's whatever.
It's
late.
It's confusing. Yeah, it's okay. I'm still staring at this stuff trying to figure it out, but okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why we're doing so many examples.
Mhm.
So at 8:20, are we legal?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what about 11 o'clock? 11 o'clock Zulu. Are we legal?
No.
Nope, we are not. Even though it's a tempo? I mean, I already put the answer, so yeah, even if it's just a tempo, we're not. So 1755.
So the tempo 1309, that's date 900 hour / 13 is date / 1200 hour, correct?
Yes, 13's the date, and then, yeah, 9 Zulu and 12 Zulu. Yeah, you're correct. So it's 1755 Zulu. Do we need an alternate? Or are we
Yes.
legal to go? Sorry.
Yes, and
Legal to
yes.
go, yeah.
Yes, and then alternate?
Yes, because you're still within, you haven't gotten past the hour for the broken clouds at 1500.
Nice. Yes, we need an alternate. What about at 19? We're legal to go?
Yes.
And then do we need an alternate?
Oh,
No.
Nope. All right.
Davis, real quick, can you go back over? I must have misunderstood something about the RVRs and how they are in relation to the minimums given. And are RVRs ever given in the TAFs?
So RVRs are not going to be given in the TAF. RVRs are going to only pretty much be given in the METAR. So if they show up and we're reporting RVRs, so sometimes actually they'll be looking and they'll report quarter mile, but they might report 6,000 foot RVRs. So it's still legal to land even though it says quarter mile. If we have live RVRs that are 6,000, 6,000 is well more than we need. But so you're talking about this touchdown?
Yes. So
Okay.
in these, I must have missed something. When you were talking about it earlier, I don't think I fully understood. So let's just go over what 16 center. Where was it?
Here we go. Okay, so if they're, so let's just say it was the METAR says a quarter mile. So are we legal to land?
Yes.
Well,
Or quarter. Sorry, no.
Yeah, quarter.
No, not on quarter. I thought you said half. Sorry.
Yeah, so at a quarter mile, we're not legal to land. So, but if they're reporting RVRs, which Seattle will be, they have RVRs and they'll be live. They're really good about their RVRs. They've got live ones, and so you can actually see. So what RVRs would we need? So like, say it was totally legal when we dispatched it, and they get there and it's the METAR is a quarter mile, and so we're not legal, but now we're looking at RVRs. So RVRs are controlling because those are going to be our live, what's actually going on right now. So let's say that we're basing our landing minimums at this point. We're a pilot, and we're basing our landing minimums off the RVRs. What RVRs do we need if we're landing on, let's just say 16 center?
So 1800.
1800. So if we go over here and we find out that one of our RVRs isn't reporting, we actually wouldn't be able to land. So, but then if we went to, let's just say 16 right, here we are. We need 1800 again. And there's nothing in there about their RVRs, so we could land on 16 right.
Okay, so if you go back into the NOTAMs, so where it says like 16 right.
Okay, so the touchdown zone, the midpoint, and the rollout?
Yeah, well, sorry. So maybe it's just because it's out. Go down to the very bottom, like the 34 right and left, where it says like the cat's RVR is 3,500.
Which NOTAM?
86543. Oh, sorry, Sorry, I gotta scroll back up. I'll just do 65-45. So this is
65-45.
so this is runway 34 left. I don't know. I remember you talking about it, but I think it just
Oh,
went
actually,
over
I
my
didn't even see
so
this one. Okay, so this is for an RMP approach.
okay.
So this is an RNAV. We don't have the approach plate for this, so this actually wouldn't affect us at all.
Okay.
But basically, what it's saying is that now you have to change the ceiling is going to increase and the RVRs are going to increase. So now you need 6,000.
Okay.
It probably
That's what I was
increased on
curious
something
about.
else. Yeah, yeah, and that's just a they're just making a change to that chart on here. This is I mean, it would take a long time to go into this whole NOTAM, just because they're also talking about like RMP values and things like that. But it just means that you have to increase it. It's just a hard increase. There might not be anything on this chart that says like increase if this or this or this. They're just going in and they're saying, nope, something happened. You have to increase this from 1,800 to 6,000.
Okay. And if those ever applied to us, would it say like ILS instead of RN or
Yes. Yeah.
okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. So it would
Now,
say, so like this one right here. So Seattle instrument approach, ILS or localizer, runway 34 right. That's what it would start with instead of RNAV. This right here, it's what it's starting with is it's telling you, okay, which chart are we using? So this one is going to be 34 right. So that means we already know that it's talking about this chart right here.
So in that case, I think in that one it said the RVR is 3,500.
So now we're
Yeah.
looking at a ceiling of 400 and yeah, increased visibility, all cats to 3,500.
So if we were dispatching to Seattle and RVR was controlling, the minimum would be 3,500.
If only this runway were,
Was available.
yeah, yep,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, that makes sense.
And then this one goes for, this one raises it a little bit more for the localizer approach. So for this right here.
now, would you pay attention to much of this if, I mean, 34 right is closed right now. So,
yeah. So we're not really worried too much about this anyway because we can't use it. It's closed.
but if it weren't closed, then that's,
Yeah.
so we also have to learn which NOTAMs take precedence over others. I'm guessing it's always the most current.
Yeah, it's the most current or more restrictive. So this probably, I mean, since we know it's closed, we know that this is not going to be, this doesn't affect us because we know it's closed. So we couldn't use this anyway. Well, let's see. This came out on September 10th. So who knows, actually, because that came out after the... Oh, no, this came out on September 10th. Oh, okay. Yeah, it came out the day I was actually still working. Which I got mixed up. I thought that was actually longer ago. But yeah, they all came out at the same time. But you can just assume that the runway closure is going to take precedence over the other thing.
Now, if I can't go back, are there? It sounds like you would talk about a scenario where if RVR is out, we cannot use the runway. Did I hear that
Yeah.
correctly?
So
Or
if the RVR is controlling and that's what we're having to use to land, and it's not reporting, then we can't land there.
okay, so even if the visibility is a mile and a half,
So if the
if the
visibility was
RVR
like a
is
mile
out,
and a half in the METAR, we'd be good to land as long as, like we'd be totally fine. But what I was talking about is if like because there are sometimes like there's METARs that come out and the METAR is like an eighth of a mile. Like this actually happened the other day in Denver. The METAR was 1/16th of a mile. But when we looked at the live RVRs, the RVRs were actually hovering between 4,000 and 6,000. So does that, I mean, it doesn't match up at all. Like a 16th of a mile, you'd think there'd be like 400 RVR, like really bad RVRs. But the RVRs were actually between 4,000 and 6,000. I had a pilot. He was going from he's going from Eagle to Denver. Really quick flight, and so he calls me and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "I see on the on our release, he's like, it's the 16th of a mile over there in Denver." He's like, "What are we still good to go?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I've been watching," and I was like, "Our RVRs are actually still hovering between 4,000 and 6,000." And he's like, "Oh." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, they haven't gone anything below that. I was like, "So I wouldn't expect them to get any worse." I was like, "If you want to, load everyone up and get ready to go," I was like, "I'll be happy to tell you the RVRs again, after you've done that, and, we'll go ahead and make sure that we're still good to go." And he's like, "Okay." And I think about the time I saw him run his numbers and get everything ready to go, I just sent him a message on ACARS before he even called me and said, "Hey, RVR's still reporting this. Haven't really changed much." So that way, in that circumstance, that's only like a 15-minute flight. The RVRs are way better than what the METAR is saying, so our RVRs are controlling. That's what we're looking at to our prevailing visibility instead of looking at the METAR. So the METAR was not legal. If we didn't have RVRs in Denver, we would not have been legal to launch that flight at a 16th of a mile. But since we had the RVRs, we were totally good. And then when he got there, he was basing his landing minimums off of the RVRs. So just kind of for some reason, sometimes the METAR and the RVRs just don't match up. That's kind of what I was going into, is like if we had to use the RVRs.
does it really ever happen that a METAR is higher than the RVR? I mean, I guess it could, but like dramatically,
It could.
and METARs be off either direction a little bit more than RVRs.
They can be off either direction, but typically if the METAR is much better than the RVRs, the METAR captures, as soon as the METAR goes down like that, or as soon as the RVRs, the visibility goes down like that, they typically issue a specie. But they may not issue the specie if the visibility goes up. Just because they don't want to keep issuing METARs that are going up and down and up and down. But if it goes down, they typically issue one that is the more restrictive, more conservative value, and then you just look at the RVRs. So there's kind of somebody controlling that, I think. That's a good question, though. So, you guys have any other questions about that? I guess that example. Let's see. If not, then maybe we'll do one more quick one. Maybe one without so many NOTAMs. Let me see who's got a bunch of NOTAMs right now. Or who doesn't have a bunch of NOTAMs. These two typically are pretty good. Let's do St. George. And let me find... I'll do a similar one. We won't do as many. So go on to your pilot web, check out the St. George NOTAMs. And pull up your St. George. There we are. Okay, so not too many NOTAMs.
There is one that says instrument approach procedure, St. George Regional, St. George, Utah, the VOR DME -A, ORIG -A, it's a procedure NA.
Yep.
Does that mean you can't use instrument approach?
So what that means is, you remember when we came in here and talked about, this is kind of what it is. St. George Regional, that's our airport. St. George, Utah, where it is. And then this was talking about which chart we're looking at. So let's go see if there's a VOR DME A approach. So where we always look at our name is going to be right up here. So sometimes we get these approaches where they don't necessarily go to a runway. What they will do is they basically plan you for a circle to land. And so there won't be a runway number up here. It'll say VOR DME -alpha. So this is the alpha chart. So if we go down here, we can actually see that there are no VOR mins. So there's no straight in mins. So when we look up here, we have straight in landing runway 19 for our LDA runway 19. So we have straight in landing runway 19. And then we have the minimums for our straight in landings. Then we have this line here, and then we have our circle to land minimums. So that shows us, you know, we have our straight in landing minimums, and then we have our circle to land minimums. So when these runways that don't have a runway number up here, that means we don't have straight in landing minimums. We just have the circle to land. So it's a ground-based approach. But basically what we're going to do is we will come in off of this to the Habta, fly in to the area of the airport, and it'll get us down through cloud layers and stuff like that. We'd fly that into there, and then once we get within visual range or to these minimums, as long as we have the airport in sight, we're good. And they would just shoot a visual. So
basically it's just VFR landing conditions.
Yeah, but if there was, so our ceiling is 1,000 feet right here. So if we had overcast at 2,000 feet, let's just say there wasn't an LDA. Let's say that all we had was this VOR approach. And so, I mean, we have mountains in the St. George area 6,000, 7,000 feet, 6,000 over here, 5,000 right here, 5,000 right here. I mean, all over this area, we have very large mountains. So if you came in and there's overcast at 2,000 feet, you're not going to be able to see the airport when you're coming in. So what they can do is that you can actually just plug this procedure into your FMS, and then you can fly this procedure, based upon where you're supposed to be at these points, and you can fly this procedure down to 1,000 feet. So that could get you through that 2,000 foot layer where you come in and like all you can see is some of the high mountains around it, because otherwise it wouldn't really be safe to start thinking about just kind of randomly ascending through a cloud layer when there's all these mountains around. So that's kind of why we have these approaches. But yeah, this procedure is NOTAMed out. And has been for a long time. It's like since April. But anyway, I got kind of long-winded there. That's what that means. So now we're looking at it, and how many charts do we have? How many approaches, instrument approaches do we have?
The one.
Yeah, just the one. We've gone over what an LDA is, right? It's basically just like a localizer that's kind of offset to where it's not as can't bring you into quite as low of minimums. So it's just kind of offset from the runway. There's a localizer type directional aid. But it's like an ILS. It still has vertical as well as lateral, horizontal navigation. Okay, so let's see. So what are our landing minimums then?
300.5.
Yep, 300.5. So then if we start looking at this, so at 5 Zulu, well, these are from last time. We start looking at this at 5 Zulu, are we legal to go? This is
I'd say off the top of my head, no, because you're. How does that work if you're exactly 60 minutes? I know if you're 51, 59, or 61, but it at 0400 Zulu, overcast at 200 feet, that's below our 300 foot minimum.
yeah. Well, so what's our weather? So what would our weather be at 5 Zulu?
The same thing.
Yeah, it'd be the same thing. So that weather, remember, this is our from line. So from the 13th at 4 Zulu until the next line. This is our weather that whole time.
Isn't legal to go visibility and ETA though?
Yeah, so we really just look at visibility for legal to go. So
So yes, we're legal to go.
this actually is, and hopefully it clears out by the time they get there. But if not, do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's probably one of those times where I put like Las Vegas or Salt Lake on there. Maybe Cedar. Depending on Cedar's weather too, but okay, so at 8:30, are we legal to go?
Oh.
Yes.
We are. So
Yeah.
what's our weather at 8:30?
3 miles of visibility. Few at 300.
Yep. Yeah. So
I didn't read the time on the tempo.
oh yeah, I changed a lot of these times
Starts at
around.
9.
So I know this
Yeah.
all looks the same, but I changed around a lot of stuff, and I also changed around a lot of sky conditions, and yeah, a bunch of stuff. Okay, so at 8:30, do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Yes. So at 9:30, are we legal to go?
No.
No.
So with this, so let's say visibility. Well, is there a difference between visibility and the vertical visibility? Would that ever be? Does vertical visibility ever dictate the actual visibility section of it?
No. So vertical
No.
visibility is basically just the ceiling, and I've only put it in there because of it's something we haven't really seen much before. You could just as easily write that as whoops. Those are basically the same.
Okay.
So that
I just
doesn't.
didn't know. The
Yeah.
term visibility just kind of threw me off of
Yeah.
if it counts or not.
That's why I've been using it tonight, is because we haven't really seen those much. But yeah, vertical visibility is. I mean, that's our ceiling. Is what we're
Yeah.
looking at there.
Okay.
So yeah, either of these two would be the exact same.
All right.
Okay, so at 11:30, are we legal to go?
Still no. Oh, wait. Sorry.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell in my typing there.
I
Okay,
was getting ahead of
and
myself.
what?
I just hadn't actually read the times on the tempos and just kind of remembering what they were for Seattle.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah, I
my
changed
bad.
them.
Always look.
Yeah, always look, because sometimes they'll actually change these, and this will go like you'll get a new TAF, and I'll be like, that looks the exact same, and it'll have changed like, from this will go on from like 12 to 10, just like I changed it here. I can't remember if it was 12 or 13 or whatever, but. And do we need an alternate at 11:30?
No.
No. I know it looks like we would. We've got all these like low numbers. Legally, we do not need an alternate. Okay, and 16, are we legal to go?
Yes.
And then do we need an alternate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. One time not too long ago, we actually there was a NOTAM in St. George for ILS runway 19 was out of service. And there were like 6 of us huddled around a computer. And we could not figure out what we argued about whether or not we had ground-based approaches in St. George. For that, we could go into a can of worms, but there were like 6 of us that sat around a computer trying to figure that out, and we're like arguing it 8 different ways, and finally, like, we had, it was a couple of dispatchers, a couple of trainers, and a couple of our like head trainers, like the head of our training staff. And we were all sitting around, and finally we're like, maybe we should call operations, find out what that NOTAM actually means. And we called them up, and they were like, oh yeah, we meant LDA, not ILS. I'm like, well, that changes a lot. So it took out this whole chart too. And it all flipped us upside down. Because then basically we didn't have an approach that went into, or we didn't have a ground-based approach. We also have an RNAV that goes into St. George, but we didn't have a ground-based approach that went into St. George. Does anybody have any questions? None at all? So we got this big hurricane over here. And it's kind of funny. If we go and look at our TCF, it doesn't really show much out there except for like way out in front of it. It's pushing up some thunderstorms out in front of it. And soon it starts to get bigger. Well, I guess it stops like right at this line here. But hurricanes actually don't get very high. So when we get these huge thunderstorms out over Oklahoma, and they kind of build up at Denver and they kind of push out over Oklahoma and Nebraska, sometimes we'll get thunderstorms with tops at like 65,000 feet. So you'd think that hurricanes would also be like, they're massively strong. You'd think that they would have tops similar to like our strongest thunderstorms in the United States, but they actually don't. So like this, they're predicting nothing over 390. It's 39,000. Whereas we get thunderstorms. We get thunderstorms every day all over the country that have tops higher than that. Just kind of cool, interesting. 450 is a 45,000 is a pretty. That's a pretty easy thunderstorm top to get. But that just kind of shows you the strength of some of our big thunderstorms that have tornadoes and things coming behind them. I kind of enjoy certain things about thunderstorm and hurricane season. I think they're very interesting. I hate the devastation that comes along with them, but as far as weather, they're kind of interesting. All right, does anybody have any questions about anything?
No, I'm good.
All righty. Well, I might be tuning in to tomorrow's, but I think Garrett's going to be leading it. And then I'll see you all next week.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.